Hello, welcome to Reality Chat, my podcast show for today. And I have with me
Andrew Rhodes.
and we're going to talk about today. We know it is the 20th year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and we would be remiss if we didn't do a show to just talk about what happened to lay people, and just bring y'all up to date. It's going to be kind of hard to talk about this thing, but it's the truth that is what happened. So we're going to talk about it. I know 20 years ago, I was up and down the interstate trying to survive, and all that water and the stuff that had taken place after the storm hit. And we were stuck here for 6 days before leaving out this city, just moving around in the midst of all the water. And we couldn't swim, we couldn't walk it. And so we had to try to find a way out. And I know there was a lot of devastation that happened to so many of us. When we left on the interstate, we saw people who was dying or was dead, floating on top of water, and we had to walk through it and pass it. People with children on their back, tied to them, moving around in the waters, and we just saw so much suffering. And it was really hard to see senior citizens hanging out the doors, begging for help, and you couldn't provide the help because you couldn't get through the water to swim to get them. And it was really hard. But we survived that. We survived it, and we are here years later. And so many didn't, but we thankful to God that we are still here. And Andrews, I know you can tell the story to what happened to you, and we can just talk about these things. It's really heartfelt,
By I'm gonna say I had not a pleasure because there was nothing pleasurable about leaving. As a matter of fact,
right.
as a matter of fact, that was disastrous. Now, that had nothing to do, well, maybe a little bit to do with the people we came in contact with, because most of my family who live in St. Bernard Parish, we evacuated the day of the storm, not knowing what we were going to run into. So I simply say that Katrina was a monster, and it was a monster for miles and miles, because even for those people who fled, they still ran, and like we did, they still ran into a mountain full of issues, because most people at that time thought they would be coming back to their homes. And from the statistics I know, there's still over 100,000 people 20 years later who were residents here, who were born and raised here, and they have not made it back home. But there's a lot of reasons regarding that. But me and Bob will talk about those reasons.
And some found it a better opportunity not to return, and some found it to be a disaster that they could not return to their home. And it was just a disaster. So many people can talk about it because they didn't live the experience. But we lived that experience. We was boots on the ground after coming back. We lived that experience, and as I say, it was just devastating. And it's really hard to talk about when I think about the traveling and the journey that we had to take to get out of this city. And I had my child with me and trying to protect my child and my husband. We got separated, and didn't know where each other was for 4 or 5 days. And it was just horrible. I don't ever want that experience again, and don't wish it on anybody else. It was just terrible. For when they showed that it was a blessing for us, that's the biggest lie I've ever been told. To me, it was like during the diaspora, while we were just separated, scattered, and it was later to find that that was part of the plan to make sure that they clean out this city of black people. And then black people, for some of us, we felt like they was talking about poor people. And some of us agreed that those poor housing project folks needs to get out the city and find some other place to live. And that's how some of us felt. But that was not who they was trying to just get rid of. They started with the poor people first because it's always the best way to start, And they start with the poor people, but they work their way on up. They always know one thing, that you are black. They know that. So they're not going to stop once they get me and leave you. So we all in this thing together, we the people. And we prove that we the people have power.
And that's a good thing to remember, Brian.
Yeah, we the people have power, and we created what we call, after returning back here and found all the suffering, we decided that we got to do something. We the people, not our politicians, not those favorite community folks that they love to pull out when it's time to talk about a disaster. It was just the people on the ground who felt it and who knew that we had to do something. And we had a long list of poor homeowners. And so we had to make sure that people saved their homes, the only wealth that most of us have and will ever have. And so we wanted to make sure that not again did they take it away. Because that's what I saw. One more time, they coming back to take away what we have. Think about Wall Street, Black Wall Street. They destroyed that because they didn't want us to have anything, and they still don't. So, Andrew, you could...
and just to, to piggyback a little bit off what you're saying, it wasn't just Black Wall Street. There are many places that Black Wall Street happened, and if you put black into it, that means, it happened to us. This was on my way back home. This was a disaster even after I made it back home. And I'll say this, and that was 2.5 years later. People know what Katrina did, but a lot of people who didn't live here didn't know the disasters after Katrina, because the move was those people who left here and couldn't afford to get back. Well, they made sure they gave them a one-way ticket out. Right. And they got a one-way ticket. They still not back. Right. But for those people that were here, they developed what's called the Road Home program. And and Ms. Viola said at the time, this program ain't right. So let's do this. She said, let's develop what's a program that was called RAMP, which is the Road Home Action Team Network. And we started doing some investigating, not just what we saw on the news, not just what we read, but
research and investigation.
Yeah, we did. We went to the people.
You're right.
We started going to the meetings. We were the first. We went to the first meeting in Baton Rouge, which made no sense to me to have it in Baton Rouge. But we went because this hurricane committee meeting was made up of, state senators and some people from New Orleans and all of those things. And even at that first meeting, because of what we knew, we asked questions that they could not answer. And the Road Home program had not even started. So after that meeting, they started holding, and I guess because we say, why y'all having it here in Baton Rouge?
And we insist that we have the meeting here because most of the affected people was here.
Yeah. So,
and we saw where the money was gone in areas that was less affected than the people in Orleans. So it's something that's wrong with this picture. You know, like I'm old enough to remember history. And so I saw it repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's come together. So we got a group of educators who can work with us, people who supposed to be in the know, and we came together and we put our heads together and we came up with what this program was all about. We saw all the poverty pimps coming in, checking all the property. I mean, poor people trying to figure out how they're gonna get back home to their property, and we got vultures riding over in a plane, spotting out the property that they want, you know, and figure out a way to get it by coming up with options to families, you know, in the way of taking their property, and they did it so good until we stepped in. They did it so well until they set up a land trust to do the what to do the sale, the option sale. Yeah. And we was literally at meetings with people. Once we found out where the sale was going to take place, we was actually at these sales and watch people crying and saying, "That's my property." You know, and that was so. It was heartfelt. It was hurting to stand there and watch them, and I feel that I could do something. Just put together a group of people. Yeah, we did. We cut this madness out. Like one of my members said, Viola Richards, she said, "But we got to stop them of these bad habits. Whenever there's lots of money, they come in like vultures and they just takes over. But we have to stop them." And we went out to do that, and we did. We stopped them. We was able to get people, hundreds and thousands of families back here to the city and to get their homes back, because we went as far as going to Washington, D.C. to meet with our president, Barack Obama, and tell him the story that he was not getting from the people on the ground who were suffering, had lost their homes. He was not getting that information. He was getting information about Jefferson Parish and that everything was so good. But we want him to know that we have not been made whole.
And that was 2 busloads of folks that made it there. And
mainly poor homeowners who perhaps had never participated in anything like this. But they was, but they was glad to do that because we made them know what was going on. We gave them some history of how things take place, and we gave them that history, and people knew that it was the truth because they was losing what they had worked so hard for, or what their family had worked so hard for. And we let them know, you don't lose your property because you didn't pay for it. It was handed down to you. That's how everybody get their money. Wealth is passed down, except for us. And we have some wealth, regardless of what I got from my grandma, my grand aunt, daddy, or whatever. It belongs to the family, and you cannot have it. And so they even try to pit families against the other one by saying that the one member of the family was getting the money and the other one wasn't getting none. And it was all for repairs. But that was the information they was trying to put out there to turn families against each other. And it happened quite a bit, but we was able to kind of stop that a little bit too. By showing the family, this is not your money to do that with. You got to make repairs to your home. And then they came with doctors that sell it. You sell it. You can't buy another one. You just take the money and leave. I mean, it was just it was awful that way it is. And lots of people didn't know anything about the way that program was working because they did not work with the people at the bottom.
Right.
And because our work is geared toward the people at the bottom, we saw it and felt the need. We knew the power of these people that was coming in here, and we wanted to change that power from the yes.
Well, one of the things we first realized, as Miss Viola talked about property pimps, that the state was part of the property pimps, because the very first program, when they did rolled out the road program, this was, and to show you how it works, was that it wasn't about just buying your property. You had an option to sell your property. Now, why the state trying to buy property, I didn't understand, but you can sell your property and then you will get the full road home grant.
Right.
But that's if you sold it. But they also was like, hey, you sell this, you can move out of town.
That's right.
And it's like, well, why do you want people to move out of town? Because they wanted this center. Look, Ray Nagin had said some things that actually folks didn't agree. Some folks, and I ain't talking about us, didn't agree with. Ray Nagin said during an interview, he said, this place is a chocolate, New Orleans is a chocolate city.
That's right.
And it is going to stay a chocolate city, and oh Lord, they wanted to impeach him or do whatever, but they found a way to get him and he went to jail.
That's right.
I was glad to see.
As they do so many.
Yeah, I was glad to see him on one of these documentaries that, because 20 years later, and you got to remember, he was the HNIC of New Orleans at that time.
But in charge.
Yeah, and in charge. So what you do is you go after the HNIC.
Right.
So they went after him. They found some things that he may have done out of desperation, because nobody had an answer for Katrina during Katrina or after Katrina. That was the worst natural disaster that has ever happened on this earth.
That's right.
So, it's like, okay, well, let's start removing the head. If you cut off the head, then, you ain't got to worry about the tail so much. So we started seeing movements that way. We started seeing people, part of the reason why 100,000 people who had not made it back to New Orleans may have sold their properties and said, hey, I don't want to be bothered with New Orleans anymore. So those are the missing people. Some just didn't come back because it's like, I can do what I need to do somewhere else.
Right.
We
had to provide a crisis line because we had to research and find where the most of our people had gone, where they took them and without their knowledge or where they was going. But we finally found where most of them was going, and we had gone, and we was able to get information in that state, and we was able to get mails and telephone calls to those people, and they contacted us back, and we was able to get some of those people to come home. Okay, get some of those people to come home and join our movement, and so the movement took place with a lot of the homeowners, like I said, who had never probably rallied on the street, or who had done so when they was much younger, and for other different reasons had stopped moving and marching. But we was able to get people to come back and take charge of what belongs to them and show them how it belongs to them and it's theirs. And they can't take it if you fight for it. And we had to talk about the history of our life of fighting for what we have. We had to fight, so it's nothing different now. We got to continue to do that.
Well, I'm just going to say, it's going to take more than one little segment that we've done because people still don't understand. A lot of people don't understand what went on, but we were boots on the ground.
Yes.
And we saw the suffering. We were the suffering. And we can talk about the stories of the individuals.
And we learned so much that we had to do in politics. I mean, we just had to do so much. We had to change laws, had to introduce laws and all kinds of things because it was, like I said, what a web we weave. We decided to deceive. And this state had decided to deceive and keep all the money. It was a web, I'm telling you, and we had to go through that web to get some help for families.
A lot of what went on, then I'm just going to say, I guess as we end, you know, a lot of the laws that they had were laws that they had for Betsy,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
and we knew FEMA and HUD and all of those people, you know, we had to protest and say, this ain't Betsy,
And
you
I
know?
saw the Jim
Yeah.
Crow
Yeah.
repeating itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new Jim Crow.
Mm.
And I saw it, you know. So yeah. But anyway, we're out of time, but we're so glad to be back with you and hope that you will continue to participate. Let us know your comments and as we continue to do this, because we all are learning here together. And we want you to know that we appreciate your comments and get a chance to hear from friends that we haven't heard from in a long time. To know that you're still with us and we are still with you, give us a call. We are always at 504-338-9205. Again, that's 504-338-9205. And Andrew, I want to thank you so much for coming and being on the show with us so we can get this information out to the people. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, we just touched on this, right? it's our touch to this, but you know, and I'll say this by being that there's documentaries and all of this is going on, we still at it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the documentary that's taking place right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been innovated all week with them. Not all of them got all the good information and the true information, but I guess they did best they could with who they interviewed, and some was so great and brought back memories and all that stuff, you know. Because 20 years I've kind of forgotten some of this stuff, and really by trying to, you know, because there was so much in there, I didn't need to remember all that stuff.
But there's memories by that we do remember of Katrina.
Oh yes,
you
it's
know,
gonna always be
and
memories.
The fact that I thought we had a city moving in the right direction, and then all of a sudden this storm and the storm after that, then
cold world.
We took another direction.
All right, so it's time to go now, and there's always more information when it's time to go. But we're gonna pick this up next week, so we'll continue it next week. If you have questions, send them in to us, and we'll deal with that next week as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. It's from our research and the years we put into this program, it's hard to put it in.
All right now. Oh yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
And because there's still a lot that the people didn't understand.
People are still suffering.
And